together. It's the Mark Davis Show.
Good morning here on this 22nd day of June 2018. Paul Gleiser filling in for Mark Davis, wrapping up my temporary tenure here. Mark will be back in the chair and back on the air with you on Monday as he returns from vacation. I've had a great time this week, and thanks to all of you for making me feel so welcome. A very, very, very busy news week. As we've rolled along this week. To kind of wrap it all up, we're going to start the show off with a conversation with my friend of a long time, since before he was elected to Congress, Louis Gohmert of the 1st Congressional District of Texas. He represents, among other things, Tyler and Longview, where my radio stations, KTBB 97.5 FM and 600 AM, are located. I am a small businessman in Louis Gohmert's district, and Louis has been a good friend to small businessmen. Good morning, Louis. How are you? And thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks, Paul. It's good to be with you. It sounds kind of weird when you say Mark's going to be in the chair, because, I mean, that's what people used to say back during the days they used old Sparky down in Huntsville for the electric chair. But
let's hope not on that.
So that's not the chair Mark will be back in, but it's always great to talk to you on the air, off the air, but always good to hear from you.
Well,
but
you and I have a running dialogue, as we know. But let's have a dialogue in public today. There are three things we can talk about. One of them is, Louis, can the leadership in the House not count votes? Why did we have two bills have been on the floor this week, or been in consideration this week, having to do with the whole problem of immigration and trying to solve this problem, which we seem institutionally incapable of doing. Why was a vote called if there was not enough votes to pass it?
Well, you put your finger on a massive problem with Republican leadership, counting votes, but right along with that, rivaling that for a problem with our elected leadership is judging the feelings across the country, for heaven's sake. Paul Ryan had said immediately after Trump was elected that, that Trump was hearing voices that nobody else was hearing. And I questioned him about that.
Well, you might argue that's why he won.
That's exactly right. And I said, but actually he was saying the things that many of us in this room in our conference were saying, and it's kind of an insult to all of us that have been saying those things. He said, look, I was just trying to pay the guy a compliment. And I said, but what you were revealing is that you have not been paying attention when many of us have been saying what Trump was saying and what he was hearing, and he captured America's mood. And so when they kept pushing this big so-called compromise bill that had a massive, massive amnesty in it, a lot of us were going, that dog's not going to hunt around here because it's just too much of an amnesty. And actually, Paul, the Goodlatte bill, as it was called, or Goodlatte-McCall bill, it went through the committee process. We had a chance to amend it at committee and all that. My problem with the Goodlatte bill was that the last 30 pages or so was an amnesty for DACA, that it gave official recognition and stamp of approval to what the President Obama had done unconstitutionally. We all knew that. And so that was my problem there. But otherwise, the Goodlatte bill was a great bill. It ended chain migration. It was going to get rid of the lottery, the visa lottery. It was going to hit hard all four of the president's major pillars. But if you listen carefully, and I complimented Paul Ryan for his amazing ability to verbalize positions now, and I said, because, first of all, you said, the compromise bill, it takes care of all four pillars. You didn't say that it actually addresses and fixes all four pillars. You said, it takes care of. And then you said, for example, since it did not end chain migration at all and was going to allow millions of parents to come in through chain migration, he was careful. He didn't say that this will end chain migration. He said it takes care of that pillar because it gets us on the road to ending chain migration.
Yeah, but that's a road. That's a road to the end we never get to. We were going to fix it in 1986.
But isn't that amazing parsing of words?
Yeah,
it gets us on the road. Well, come on, that's really disingenuous. The truth is, it doesn't end chain migration. Why don't you just say that? But going back to the point that you nailed, and that is they weren't counting votes. That our leaders were saying on television and radio as recently as yesterday morning that the compromise bill had so many more votes than the Goodlatte bill. And as some in our conference were saying yesterday, look, we think the Goodlatte bill has got more. And then when it got 193, some in conference were pointing out, Paul, Kevin, look, you're not going to get more votes than 193. And 193 tells you this is a tiny tweak away from passing. And I pointed out, I felt like if they put the family fix on the Goodlatte bill, it would pass.
Well, then let me interrupt you, Louis. Then why not? Why not just do it? What's the hang-up here?
Because it does end chain migration. It does set up merit-based immigration. And the National Chamber of Commerce was against the Goodlatte bill because it doesn't allow an unending amount of really cheap labor to keep pouring into our country illegally. They don't want to end that. They want that. They want the cheap labor. Never mind that it is devastating our country. They're not as concerned about that as they are cheap labor. So that's why they didn't go ahead and push to get the Goodlatte bill passed, because that's not what the national chain or National Chamber was wanting. It could have passed. They could have fixed it.
And so the people's voices don't count. The lobbies count. Is that what it boils down to?
That's what apparently our leaders were looking at. They weren't listening to voices across the country, or they would have heard it loud and clear. I mean, I hear your editorials. You get it. You hear it. You know how people are feeling across the country, but our own leadership was not getting that. And so what happens? Well, and late in the conference yesterday evening, people were saying, look, the only way we're going to get this compromise bill passed is to tell the president. He's got to tweet out. This was last night and this morning they were saying he's got to tweet out that all Republicans have got to get behind this compromise bill. Let's get it passed. If he'll do that, we've got a great shot of passing that bill. And thank God, and thank President Trump, he tweeted out this morning, you know what, let's back up and see if we can't get a better bill out. So since he's not tweeting out, jump on board, let's all die together on this compromise bill, let's lose the majority together. Since he's not pushing people to pass it, there's no way that would pass. There's no way it'll get close to 193.
Well, so let me underscore what you said before we shift gears here. I don't know if you know this. Rasmussen Reports poll out this morning that says 54% of those polled believe that the parents attempting to enter the country illegally are responsible for the child separation crisis and not the Trump administration. They're blaming the people. See where the problem is. It's the parents entering illegally and bringing their kids. the people have gotten this right. And
yeah, they have. They have. God bless the people. Isn't that amazing?
it is amazing.
They're getting it.
They get it right. Let me shift gears on you.
Despite the universities and the mainstream, well, it's not even mainstream. It really is lamestream. The people are getting it right. That's wonderful. I had not heard that.
Yeah, it's just out this morning. Let me shift gears on you. The Inspector General's report, which kind of fell off the front pages. We still use that metaphor, even though the papers are dying.
Yeah.
But we still fell off the front pages because of all of what was going on the border. But that IG report is absolutely damning. And yet, sitting out here, Louis, I don't see. My fear is that nothing substantive is going to come of it and that no real consequence will fall. Do you share that fear?
You bet I share that fear. I'm very, very, very concerned about that because this sickness, this cancer, the bias in the Department of Justice at the top is just eating it up. You've got rank and file people like in the offices we have in Texas. Noel, many of the people in our Texas FBI offices, these are good people.
Well, I had lunch with a couple of them at the Holly Tree Country Club last Friday. I can tell you how they feel. They're sick.
Yeah, it's just such a blot on all of their reputation. And actually, the report that Horowitz did that we got to question him about this week, he was not even being above board. He documents hundreds of pages of just outrageous bias and then comes to the conclusion that we see no evidence bias affected anything in the investigation. When right in the report at 9 of the conclusions, executive summary, he says Strzok's decision, it was his and his alone to make, to shift from the Hillary investigation and getting into her emails, he decided, he alone, to shift and go after Trump in the Russia investigation. Now, he clearly had unlimited bias against Trump and for Hillary, and absolutely, there is just screaming evidence that bias affected this thing. It caused him to shift from Hillary to Trump, and yet, and I told Horowitz, I get it. You want to throw a bone to both sides. Okay, Republicans, here's hundreds of pages of bias, so now you have that to support your position. And then I'm going to make the outrageous statement that none of that affected the investigation, and that'll make the Democrats happy. So that's what he did, but it was not honest. It was very dishonest.
Your prediction, any indictments, any firings? Strzok was let out of the building, and today we learned he's lost his security clearance. But is there anything going to happen?
But he hadn't lost his paycheck yet. That's what gets me. Yeah, he was walked out of the building. He lost his security clearance, but he's still getting a paycheck.
So what's your prediction? Does anything come of this? Do we get any satisfaction?
My prediction is once we get into the investigation as to bias in the Trump the Trump-Russia investigation, that there will be indictments come from that. There have to be. But it's sure looking bad in the meantime, and they are not cleaning up the mess there. And Jeff Sessions is a great guy. He has done probably more than anybody else in that position would have done on trying to secure the border. Oh, by the way, Paul, I don't know if we talked about this before, but how the immigration judges that make the absolute determinations on asylum and who gets to stay, how they're selected? They're appointed by the Attorney General. So we had 8 years of they're not even confirmed by the Senate, just strictly up to the AG who's appointed. So we have got a great guy making those appointments, just like we were devastated with the appointments that Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch made. But that is really making a difference there. They're getting decisions quicker, but we need Jeff to recognize there are a lot of people, including Rosenstein, around him that are not out for his best interest and not out for the best interest of the country.
Well, listen, do you have to run, or can you stay till the bottom of the hour?
I really need to run.
Okay, well, then I'm going to let you go.
I can tell you, you're right on track with everything you said, everything you've asked. You have your finger on the pulse. Yeah, you'd make a good speaker, Paul, if you were interested.
Listen, as frustrated as I am with the current speaker, I'd be if I thought I could get elected, I'd run, because the guy's making me insane. And so, by the way, is the guy down the hall in the Senate. Mitch McConnell, I think, is the biggest single problem in Washington. And with that, I'm up against a break. It's always a pleasure. Right. Safe travels, Louis. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks so much.
Have a great day. Well, there